Ain't you sick of giving me your money?
Oh, it's... Oh. I know he didn't do it, baby.
Hold on a second. Whoa. Where you going?
No, I'm about to go make these drop balls.
What's up, everybody? It's Bradley DLO Thomas. By day, I am a marketing and IT professional at a pharmaceutical company, and by night, I'm a producer and MC. So let me pass the mic.
Hey, what's up? It's your girl, Opal Alisa. I am a poet, spoken word artist, MC, author, and by day, I am director of multicultural business strategy for a large financial firm. I'll pass the mic.
What's going on? My name is Cor Whitmore, owner of Media 22, affiliated with Radio 22, Studio 22. I would love to get back in the booth, though, but I just can't find the
time. You need to, brother. I've seen you spit some bars, but
2026 album, right?
Right. We still on par for 2026. We may have to push it back to 2027. We'll see.
Yeah, he on that J Electronica, right? He'll barely drop an album. But let's not get too sidetracked because we all have a passion for hip hop and finances, and we have a very, very special guest with us today. She's the founder and CEO of Mind2Money. She's a business owner. She is a human resources expert and professional, and she is a HBCU alumni from North Carolina AT&T. Please give it up for Veronica Barnes, y'all. Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Really excited to be with you all today.
Cool. I'm glad you can make it. So, you've attended some prestigious universities, including a HBCU. Can you tell us what that experience was like and how it differed from your experience from a predominantly white institution?
Yeah, of course. My time at North Carolina A&T was invaluable. Aggie pride for any other Aggies out there. And I think for me, the biggest difference or the benefit that I found was a sense of community. I would say early on in joining the honors program and just kind of being with the community there was an expectation of success but as well as a community of like support. So I think that was something that was very obvious for me just throughout my career. And even to this day, in terms of, I went back to homecoming this past October and had a chance to interact with some of the students, and I was just so proud to hear what some of the students were getting into and sharing their experience and recently graduated. And so, just seeing the big things that I already know that they're going to go on to accomplish. But for me, having that culture in that environment was very conducive for me to have a support system, as well as being an institution to learn around with a diversity of people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
I hear that a lot. Like that community piece is so big. I went to predominantly white institutions, but in high school, even had my eye on some HBCUs, and that is one. I don't have too many regrets, but that's one thing I think I would have loved to experience. Just seeing it come from my friends and colleagues who love it, and they say that just like the amount of community and people pouring into you, and I see a different like confidence level, honestly, in a lot of people that have gone through HBCU. So thanks for sharing that with us. We'd love to hear even like more of your story. Like what has led you to build and become all the things that DLO was saying earlier, as far as a business owner and an HR professional. What's kind of your story?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, I always say I kind of learn through experiences and reevaluate things. So I've been a bit of a career switcher. So Actually, my undergrad was in finance. I knew I wanted to go into business. Didn't necessarily know what area, but finance. I like math, and finance sounded like it would be a good fit. I'm pretty kind of analytical, and so really enjoyed that. Started in a rotational program with GE, and so had a chance to move geographically every 6 months for my first job out of school. So
That's cool.
working in different businesses and yeah, learning the country. So, but I would say from experiences, kind of learning what I enjoy and what, maybe I don't enjoy as much. And I think ultimately I had an opportunity to work closely with HR during my time in finance, because I would say they go hand in hand in business, because people for a lot of companies are the most expensive part of it. And so from a planning perspective, I work closely with HR and different projects, and that gave me that exposure to ultimately kind of influence my interest in transitioning into HR. At the time, I was applying for grad school and looking at some other opportunities. I ended up working for an education nonprofit and went out to California and worked with a school that was getting reconstituted. So that experience really kind of solidified my interest in HR, because it was working a lot with change management, but it also tied into a lot of my interest in working with the community. It was it, it opened my eyes to the impact of exposure and collaborating to work towards having a bigger impact. And so kind of from there, I went back to grad school and focused on human organization performance. Then after that, I went to another rotational program and transitioned into different journalist roles from an HR perspective, specialty roles. I moved, I want to say 3 or 4 times with that company. And then more recently transitioned to kind of the tech sector. And really kind of when I look at different transition points, it's how do I kind of broaden my experiences? I think you never necessarily know 100% kind of taking a leap into a different direction, but trying to use it as a learning opportunity and build that foundation. And if you need to pivot, you can pivot. I say when I transitioned from finance to HR, I'd say I was going through a quarter life crisis, but it kind of got me on my career path. And I really enjoy a lot of the aspects of HR in terms of professional development, in terms of having that kind of business lens on things, but then also helping people identify like their potential and their interests in working together. And so I enjoy that aspect of HR, but I still have that analytical mindset, and I've always had kind of an interest in personal finance. I was I was one of those kids in high school that read like personal finance books. It was pretty cool. So I think for me, starting Mindset to Money was around the time of the pandemic, and just seeing like the adverse impact that more minorities had based off of being either frontline workers and not having maybe some of the opportunities to based off of finances to work remotely. Or I think a lot of times for me, I kind of equated it to people in some senses choosing their livelihood over their life, because there was a lot of questionable, with a lot of unknowns around the pandemic at the time. So so to me, starting Mindset to Money, and it ties into my belief around like exposure and education, and how I think that can help drive change.
That's dope.
Yeah,
That's
I love that.
dope. So what was the what were those types of jobs? You said rotationary jobs. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Is that what they were called? Okay.
Yes, yeah. So both were kind of like leadership development programs.
Okay.
Yeah, so finance, kind of rotating through like financial planning and analysis. Trying to think of some of the like commercial finance, where we're looking at more like front end, like orders, business planning, And so I enjoyed the rotational program just because it does give that like broader experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then from an HR perspective, I started out for the journalist role working in a plant in Minneapolis. And then let's see, from there, a compensation role, and then project management role, working with our M&A team in HR. And more recent, kind of my other role was supporting more the front end of the business from the HR perspective. So
Mm.
um, marketing strategy, sales. And so I think too, like supporting different client groups helps me learn more about those aspects of the business. And then I've always worked with businesses that have been more very kind of like metric driven. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
it's helped me even kind of take some of those experiences as I kind of plan out things with mindset to money and my business. So I'm thankful to be able to have that like lens on things and can learn from those as well.
That is truly awesome. It's like listening to you, it's almost like you got your MBA but in experience. You got your PhD in experience because you got to be able to touch all these different parts of the business. And for all the listeners out there, please pay attention to this. And I forgot to tell y'all that grab you a notebook, grab you
Mm-hmm.
something, grab you a pen,
Yep,
because
yep, yep.
she's going to be telling you things that you may not have heard about. So write this down because you're more likely to actually remember it in your mind. So I'm so glad that you broke that down for us. Um, I guess what is your general philosophy in life? Because you're very ambitious, you're very successful. Are there any kind of mindsets or quotes in your head that you kind of live by that keep you going from day to day?
Yeah, no, great question. So I actually have like three that I'll share.
Okay.
Nice.
One that really resonates with me is from Maya Angelou. People don't necessarily remember what you
Mm,
say or what you do, but they remember how you make them feel.
yes.
And
Yeah.
so I think that resonates with me a lot, even being in HR. I never necessarily take it lightly that decisions that we're making or things that are going to be implemented, because it does have an impact on people's lives, whether it is a business decision and we have to communicate that. But how do you do that in a sense with empathy and understanding their perspective? I would say the other two, so one is I think success is when opportunity meets preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that quote and that philosophy because I think at different points, I haven't, I've made maybe kind of sharp pivots in things I didn't necessarily know how it would turn out necessarily, but I felt like I was in a position that I prepared, and the opportunity presented itself, and I was able to kind of make that pivot quickly because of that preparation. And so I always say I kind of make a plan, but I always try and stay flexible as well. And then the last one, and I don't know if I made it up, but it's someone that I like, and I hadn't heard it from anywhere before, so maybe I did. But I would say try and make decisions that give you choices.
Mm,
And so
Ooh.
I like
what
that.
that means to me is it's really can kind of can be looked at in different ways. Like, so when I think of it from a finance standpoint, having an emergency fund can put you in a position that if you were to lose a job or you were to have an emergency, like you're not necessarily between a rock and a hard place. You have an opportunity to step back and maybe evaluate, like, okay, well, this didn't work out. Like, what do I want to do next, and have choices. Or I think for me, even transitioning from finance to HR, I decided to get my MBA versus a master's in HR. I think either one would have worked, but for me in my mind, I'm kind of like, well, I think I want to do HR, but if not, it'd be easier for me to maybe like pivot with the MBA. So I just kind of think about that sometimes in different choices that I'm making, like what decision might open up different opportunities for me.
That's dope.
I love that. I love that a lot. That was really tight. And then how you pulled
Mhm.
into finances too. Absolutely, absolutely. Kind of speaking of that, like many of our listeners are business owners, but also work a 9 to 5, like you, like me, like DLO. Um, so how do you balance the two, and how does that work for you?
Yeah, no, great question. I would say I'm still learning how to totally balance it. Uh, for me, one thing that has helped me is thinking about systems, and it kind of goes back to what you had mentioned before is almost getting a lot of getting that education from experiences, and so being able to leverage what I've learned partly through my 9 to 5 to kind of implement in my businesses. And so one thing that I try to do is kind of set up like almost like admin time or time on the weekends where I really can devote to like what are my processes. And then I think the other thing is because I would say my business more so, I'm operating in more of my I call it my passion project, but I'm operating more in my creative space. And I do have a lot of ideals and it is something that I'm very like interested in driving change and making an impact. And so allowing myself to have that creative space, but then also thinking about a way to make it systematic and have processes in place that is manageable. So I think sometimes it's ebbs and flows, but that's kind of what I try to do is just take a step back and say what processes do I have in place and what help do I need and kind of and I was trying to put my project management hat on
Mhm.
sometimes and saying, okay, what are my milestones? What are my actions? How do I break things down? And work towards what goals I have for either the year or the quarter, and start there.
Yeah, such a good point. Just about like the systems and the processes. I don't know if y'all have ever worked in like a community or a board or with like friends trying to like get a project done who don't have some of that like corporate background. It is like it feels right. Like you got to like
Yeah.
show the organization. So I'm with you. I apply everything that I can that I'm learning from my 9 to 5 to my own business and endeavors as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to be redundant, but to, are there any other strategies to kind of leverage that 9 to 5 to really go and help pursue those dreams? I know when, my younger self, I would always try to involve a lot of the things that I did, whether the 9 to 5 or connected to the 9 to 5, that would mimic in some ways the things that I would do in the business. So it almost felt like the 9 to 5 wasn't work per se. It kind of felt
Mhm.
like it was like
Mhm.
it's all going in the same direction.
Yeah, yeah.
What advice or what tips would you that you could share with folks that may help them to possibly leverage more of that 9 to 5 to really feed into the dream and the things that you're doing outside of that job?
Yeah, yeah. So I would almost say a few things, like maybe depending on like your area that you're in. So for me, having a background in finance, even though it wasn't where I saw myself long term from a corporate perspective, having the lens of, what is my P&L statement? What is my bottom line? Where's my cash flows? What are those
Mm,
fundamental financial aspects that I need to make sure that I'm focusing on from a business perspective? I would say similarly with HR, what are the skill sets that I need, or what are those? How do I have things organized in a way to focus on what's needed from a resourcing standpoint? And then another thing, I went to an entrepreneurship workshop in National Black MBA workshop in Atlanta, maybe a few years ago, and there's a panel that really resonated with me because someone asked a question about, how do I manage things with, my 9 to 5 um, and my entrepreneurship aspects, and I don't have outside funding to really get
right.
going with my entrepreneurship. And the person on the panel just asked the question, well, who do you think is the biggest donor to entrepreneurship ideals or plans, and it's corporate America. So,
Mhm.
for me, even so, before I started Mindset to Money, I dabble a little bit in some real estate investing, and so
Mm.
it kind of opened up the lens of using your 9 to 5 from a resource standpoint as well.
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm,
so whether
mm-hmm.
that's financially, whether that's maybe colleagues that have different
Mm.
experiences,
Mhm.
um, but I think also using that lens when finding opportunities to kind of leverage that 9 to 5 on to you in your businesses also.
Oh, some of our
Mhm.
previous guests are cheering you on right now. Hearing you say that, because we've had 3 people in real estate come on here,
Yep,
and I
yep.
know that they're loving that last statement. So we appreciate it, and I know they appreciate it as well.
Mhm.
That's cool. That's cool. I have kind of a selfish question. So
Sure.
I know you've talked about systems. Are there any tools that you kind of prefer to use that
Mm.
might even be free for people out there who's running their business that you would highly like recommend to help them kind of organize like the project management and all all the other aspects of the business to make it run better, to make it run more smoothly?
Yeah, no, good question. So I'm a fan of like templates. So for me, even like in Excel, or I'll do a Google search real quick to see, project plan for this.
Mhm.
Um, I might share a little bit more later on just kind of one of my projects this year is working on planning a conference um, with, and me and my associate were working on it, like uh, haven't planned a conference before. And so just doing the research to say, like, well, what are those steps? What are those key? Because when I think about project management, it's like, what are those what's that critical path to make sure that,
Mhm.
there's going to be things that we're going to learn from and have to adjust, but like, what are the foundational things that we need to put in place for it to be successful? So looking up just research on what are those like articles or leveraging that. But I would say a lot of times in Excel or Google Sheets, they'll have like templates that kind of
Mhm.
already have some of that like outlined. I'm trying to think of other tools offhand. I haven't started using this one as much recently, but one of my colleagues that is also starting their entrepreneurship journey is working with a HoneyBook
Mm.
as kind of like a
Mhm.
CRM system. And so, again, just thinking through how are you keeping things organized from a communication standpoint, and because it is busy with balancing a 9 to 5 and your other
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. So how do you make it easy on yourself to streamline that? So I think they have a free trial. That's something I did say I want to kind of explore a bit more, but it does seem helpful for like communications, keeping information organized in that way. It's kind of like a central repository. So I think they have a CRM system, I think Salesforce, but
Mhm.
looking at something that's like a customer relationship management tool to kind of keep things organized.
I have a selfish question too. So since you're in HR, I've wanted to ask you this. So I hear all the time that women don't negotiate salaries like at the same rate as men, and like especially women of color. So number one, is that true? And then with your HR experience, especially I think being like all over the country, like do you have any tips for folks who are like trying to negotiate their worth or understand kind of what they should be paid? Yeah, any tips you have on that, I think would be super helpful for myself and a lot of our listeners too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And one of the reasons why I'm really interested in the personal finances, it's, I think, looking at it holistically. So there's the money management part, but there's also the income piece. And
Mhm.
so how you are negotiating can really make a big difference. And so I do think that there is a disparity in terms of just pay, like a pay gap. And I think it's both with women and minorities. And I think
Mhm.
part of it is that negotiation aspect. So what I usually try, I recommend is having a kind of doing your research, and understanding like the worst. Usually, if they're giving you the offer, they more or less like want you at that point, and the worst they could do is say like no to what you're requesting. But looking at the package holistically as well, so there is that salary aspect, but there's also companies that have other elements to their compensation or their total package, whether it's their benefits, whether it's paid time off, and so or whether it's equity. And so while something might be lower on one end, if you're looking at the whole package, maybe it's higher in this other aspect. So taking that into consideration as well as also what is your goal from a career trajectory standpoint? So is it a position that might give you the skill set that you need to transition into a bigger role, or transition from functions that you're looking to do? So I always say it's one, kind of look at it holistically in terms of like what the opportunity is. I would say secondly, understand like what your ask is and maybe prioritize it. So while there are different aspects, there might be, for example, the base, the bonus, and like an equity piece, or vacation. What is your priority in terms of your negotiation? So there might be areas that it is what it is, like from a bonus percentage or salary range, but they might have more flexibility in other areas. So kind of prioritizing what your ask is, and then also doing the research to say, I'm asking for this because of this reason. And I think sometimes we don't like, sometimes it's just kind of understanding what you are bringing to the table and being comfortable with that, and understanding like they want you for a reason and you're there. It's something you don't want to negotiate against yourself. So kind of, to me, I kind of take the approach of, ultimately, if I apply for this job and I'm interested in this job, it's something that I'm interested in. But then if you're interested in me, it's mutual. So how do we work together to maybe get over this like negotiation hurdle to get to be mutually beneficial? So that's usually the approach I take, and just also using doing like research in terms of, I think they're starting to do more like pay transparency. And so seeing like based off of roles, based off of years of experience, what is a range that's kind of comparable to my level and what I'm seeking. So, but I definitely, again, I say at the point that you get the offer, it's all I can do is say no to asking more, but just kind of going in there with an organized approach, and kind of rationale to ask for what you deserve.
Awesome. I feel like that's a gem, right? Like the prioritization piece. And then just like the worst that they could say is no. Cause I think how we feel is that like they're going to take the whole job back if I ask like for something different. And that's absolutely not true. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I think sometimes too, it's just like, because it is, if you're transitioning, people transitions for different reasons. Maybe don't want to be at the job they were at before. And so it's part of it is, I think that like mindset or psychology of it too is, while you might be looking to transition from your previous role, they still are excited to have you at this new role. And so I think too, just kind of stepping back and understanding, again, like you're bringing a certain skill set, you're bringing experience, there's a lot that you're bringing to the table. And so don't making sure you're not discounting yourself, and again, you're not negotiating against yourself in those situations.
I definitely need to learn the art of negotiation. I try to do some books on it, because I know that's not a strong suit. But everything you shared, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And it goes back to something that you said earlier, which is about preparation. and being prepared, and knowing what you're asking for, and like you said, prioritizing what's important in that negotiation. So, maybe part of that is really getting my thoughts better organized as far as what I want to do and what I'm looking for as an outcome. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, and maybe one more thing that I'll add to that, because I think this is you don't have to do it in a silo either. Like if you have
Mm,
others that are either at that company or in similar roles, that you need a sounding board, that you need someone to say like,
mm,
no, you are bringing a lot to the table.
Mhm.
Like here's how you articulate it, but don't, it's not something that you have to necessarily feel like you're in a silo. Like I've had mentors through like National Black MBA, or other colleagues that have either had exposure to different areas that have helped me to kind of do that prioritization and kind of understand, like, have that broader perspective too. So I think that'd just be the one thing I'd add is, don't feel like you have to do all that research and articulate, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a silo.
thank you for that.
Mhm.
And the other thing it brings up, which is crazy, is a old 50 Cent interview where he talks about how he enters all negotiations without fear. Like
Mm.
he's played it out in both directions,
Mm.
and he's already come to peace with which whatever outcome
Oh, that's dope.
happens, and that kind of gives him leverage and a sense of comfort in the moment to
Mhm.
say, hey, I'm just I'm just going to shoot my shot. If it goes through, great, then I'm where I hope to be. If it doesn't, I've already prepared myself for that. And I think many people don't enter into that space a lot due to fear of
Yes.
if it doesn't end up going the way that I want it to go.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I appreciate that, and definitely leveraging other folks. That's probably something that I never thought of in the past in that
Mhm.
position. So thank you for adding that. Um, Speaking about companies and being in companies, are there things that you've learned from these companies that you've been with that you've been able to apply to your business? I would say whether good or bad. I've had experiences prior to my first business where I learned a lot of things of what not to do.
Mhm.
but it still helped me. It wasn't what I was looking for. It wasn't all the information I was looking for to say, oh, I can grab this and apply it, but at least it put me on a path to say, I see that these things don't work,
Mhm.
and I know I don't want to repeat those moving forward. Do you have anything that you're willing to share with us? Whether, like I said, whether it's things that you've learned that you've applied, or things that you said, that's probably not the way you should do it, and I know I don't want to apply that to my business.
Yeah, yeah. So I say the things to apply would kind of probably go back to like the systems and then maybe like the financial aspect of it. Because at the end of the day, it's like a business, like it might be associated with a passion or interest too, but for you to, when I think about for me to have an impact on the financial literacy piece, if I'm not successful as a business, then I'm not going to be able to have
Mhm.
that outreach. So, I
Mhm.
got to make sure like I can pay my business bills. And then,
Yes.
but you brought a good point in terms of kind of two experiences that, may not be as beneficial. And I think for me, um, one thing that I think I probably try to incorporate is having like that collaboration kind of framework in situations. I think I've been in some business areas where it has been maybe someone's very focused on getting believing that maybe like their way was the only way,
Mm,
and I think that kind of can stifle people from bringing in other ideals. And I think that collaboration is very important. I don't know who said this, but it was a business leader that mentioned this that really resonated with me. Is I don't know if he was like the CEO or president, but he was basically saying, I want people to disagree with me because if someone disagrees with me, like someone's right or someone's wrong or someone in the middle, but who's to say necessarily that I'm right? And I think
mm,
Mhm.
um, to me, I think that shows like that humility to say like, what are the other perspectives? And then I think also, because people bring different perspectives and experiences, and then people have different lenses. So um, there might be instances where someone's closer to either like my target audience or demographic that might have insight that I might not necessarily have. And so I want to instill a sense of openness, to have that perspective, to listen and incorporate it, or have the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I know you work in tech, and I feel like that attitude is something that I think like tech has taught like other industries and businesses. Like I work in finance, and we're generally behind in most things, but I think we're starting to like adopt that just understanding of like challenging questions presented, of course, in a professional way, and the proper channels are the only way to innovation, and kind of trying to do things the old way doesn't work. So I love that piece that I feel like tech has brought in. I also feel like it's brought in like this welcoming of folks like us who do have things outside of work, because then I think they get, just as he asked, what are you taking from these big companies to your business? I think companies are realizing that when we work on our own business, we're bringing in stuff back into our 9 to 5s that's much more creative, that has that additional like experience and confidence with it. So I love that kind of trade-off that I'm starting to see in different places where I feel like people kind of had to choose, and you have to like work, save up, and then quit your job to dive into something else. And now you're really kind of able to do both. So love that. We also talked a bit about like your corporate experience and stuff, but another reason that we bring folks on, besides that, plus being an entrepreneur, is the community impact piece. That's always important to us, that we get folks who are experts and have great experiences, but that also see the value in giving back to the community, because that's the whole reason we do this podcast, is to give back to the community and really share insights. So could you tell us a little bit about the work that you did with the Los Angeles Unified School District?
Yeah, sure. And so I actually found out about education pioneers. It was at the time that I was looking at going back to grad school, and actually wasn't sure if I was going to get into the school that I wanted to get into or how that was going to pan out. But just kind of in parallel, had learned about this opportunity where they were looking for people with business experience to go into the nonprofit sector, and just kind of utilize those skill sets. And so the more I like learned about it, I'm kind of like, well, maybe I would even want to. I actually ended up deferring my grad school year to when I got into this fellowship. But I guess for me, it was an opportunity I've always kind of enjoyed like volunteering. I think also, especially like working with like youth. I did Big Brothers Big Sisters when I lived in Philadelphia. Um, and like a different like entrepreneurship, even kind of like guidance. And so for youth. And so this was kind of an opportunity to really like delve into it a bit more. So the organization I work with was grant funded, but they were working with a school that was in LA, that was just been chronically low performing. And during the middle of the year, the superintendent basically said that they were going to bring in 2 new operators. One was a charter school, and then one was a district school that was focused primarily on school turnarounds. And so it was, I would say, only a handful of the teachers were there the year that I was there. A lot of my role was around helping the 2 school organizations work together, because even though they're separate school organizations, they shared a campus. The students were split between the 2. Um, a lot of it was around like processes again. So while I was in an entity that was kind of in between helping both organizations and helping them set up those protocols. And so also as a middle child, I enjoy that piece, and bringing people together, and helping to establish like what those processes were. Also, a lot of it, my role there was looking at data. So with it being kind of a pilot to use this approach for school turnarounds, understanding like what are some of the metrics or what are some of the goals that the school really had to say like this was successful or to just track the impact of this different model. And so at the time, it was kind of me coming off of more of my finance, more like data driven career. And so first kind of establishing like, well, what are some of the metrics that would be important, like student attendance, test rates, and then kind of setting up those protocols to bring both administrative teams together to like review this data. And I think it was really um, eye-opening for me, and it helped me from a communication standpoint too, because I think previously, I was working with numbers, but it's numbers based off of orders. Like these numbers is like associated with a student and it has more of a depth to that information. And so being able to kind of understand that and be able to kind of communicate in a way where not all the metrics were where we wanted to be at that time, but having a lens of, well, what steps can we take to improve the trajectory or operational change that might be able to help influence the numbers or influence the results to be beneficial for the students.
Very cool. I love that every data point was a student. Like, I truly believe if you look at data points as people, like that's where like real change can come from things, and then you can really make informed decisions. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for your work in that. Like I'm only imagine like how much impact that will continue to have like as generations go for kids being able to get that proper education.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that year. And I think again, like when I think about things or experiences that have kind of influenced even mindset to money, um it's those experiences that seeing like the impact of like exposure. So one of my one of my projects there, I organized a college fair. Um and so it was very like grassroots, but we had like 50 like college organizations and like community groups there. Because I think this graduation rate was around like 30%. But
Mm.
to me, it's like that exposure to what options are out there. And so I had went to a or a meeting at the school where I think it was kind of brought up to maybe recommend maybe like trade schools or vocational schools, which those are great options as well. But I'm very big on giving someone all the choices or all the opportunities and letting them choose the path that's right for their situation, um, and not limiting someone. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of really what drove me to want to plan that college fair.
Very dope. So I saw on your website you've got like some different like services. So can you kind of talk about the Mindset to Money different services that you all offer and how folks can take advantage of that?
Yeah, sure. So primarily focused on uh, financial literacy, again, looking at like holistic. So with both my background in finance and HR, really focusing not just on the money management piece, but then also that income piece. So, whether it is salary negotiation, whether it is career planning, um, having that like holistic view. I primarily have done work with like workshops with college students, but then also do smaller workshops, individual coaching. I would say the best way to get in touch is uh, through email info@mindsettommoney.org. And, would love to do just kind of a discovery call and see if the services would be a good fit for either your organization or you yourself.
Awesome. And I know like everyone is like different, but are there like common problems people are looking to solve or like a common hurdle or stumbling block that folks kind of have when they come in and reach out?
Yeah, I would say to me, it's a lot. Financial literacy isn't. Some states are starting to include it into their curriculum now, but it's not really something that's like taught in
Mhm.
school. So, um, some of the basics in terms, some of the, I would say not necessarily basic, but some of the foundational elements like interest rates and credit,
Mhm.
understanding like the impact of like having a budget. And then to me, those are kind of some of the foundational things to kind of understand that way, like when different dynamics change in the economy, you're able to plan your course of action based off of what's going on. Like I think interest rates are, or excuse me, inflation is starting to go down a little bit, but
Mhm.
understanding, well, what is the impact of a higher interest rate, or knowing like interest rates are probably still, the Fed has indicated that it's more than likely to continue to increase over the next few times.
Mhm.
So what does that mean if I'm trying to purchase a house, or I have my credit cards that have variable rates?
Mhm.
What impact is that going to have? And so understanding some of those fundamental elements, and then how that can influence your decisions when you're um, navigating your finances.
That's so good. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I know we've tried to have guests come in and tackle a few of those
Mhm.
issues, but I mean, you hit it right on the head. Like that's the foundation. That's kind of where it starts when you're really going on that journey to really learn finances and the ins and outs of it. Um, are there some things, for our listeners that are tuning in? Are there some things that they can um partake in or be a part of? I know you also have a conference coming up. So if you could fill us in on any of those things, because I know that our listeners would definitely love to
Mhm.
participate in things that you guys have going on in our organizing right now.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. So, I'm very excited to share. I'm partnering with Afra Smith from the Melanin Project,
Mhm.
also based in Madison. And we're going to be hosting the first wealth literacy conference this April 29th. It's going to be at the Goodman Center, and this is going to be a full day event. And really, we're very intentional to focus on wealth literacy in the sense of what is the systematic change that wealth has. So, we talked about before in terms of like one emergency away from being between a rock and a hard place
Mm.
financially.
Mhm.
So with wealth literacy, or with wealth, financial literacy is one of those building blocks to wealth.
Mm.
But um, what wealth means to me, at least, is having that be more sustainable, it could be more transformative. And so during this conference, we're looking to bring in some really awesome speakers and topics that will really hone in on helping our participants and audience come out of that event with kind of a game plan, some key educational information, and resources that they can in turn work towards building their wealth.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds amazing. And for those who are watching this on Spotify or YouTube, y'all saw our faces when she said Afra Smith. But
Right.
for those listening, y'all didn't see it. But Afra is a friend of the show. You can check her in episode 1, season 1, dropping gems left and right. So love that you two are connecting. That to me sounds like a dope Marvel team up. So we can't wait. That'll definitely be a dope conference folks should check out.
Thanks. And one other thing I'll maybe add on that is, so for this first conference, some of our pillars or our 3 pillars are mindset, community, and action planning.
Mm.
And even when I think about that community aspect, I'm relatively new entrepreneur with Mindset to Money, and even thinking through from a community standpoint, met Afra through an accelerator program. um, and she has been a mentor and resource for me. And so really with the conference too, I think what we're looking at is how do we build that collaboration in that community, so people are aware of the resources, they are aware of how we can help one another in this financial journey together.
Mhm. That's dope. Yeah, as you say that, I'll just add one more thing. I feel like you just said like knowing your resources. When I'm listening to your story and everything you shared, like you seem like a person who knows how to tap into your resources. You were like the Black MBA group, like you did not miss a beat connecting with folks and stuff. And I think that that's so important because like you never know who you're going to meet. And that for me, I found that, and I'm trying to do more of that, but I found that to be like a really positive thing within my own career is like connecting with folks in the different groups and affiliations that are out there, because I am more of like a shy person, right? So I'd much rather be in a group and then be connected and work on a project than walk into like a mingle place and like hand out my business card. Like that is the worst thing in life for me. Like I never ever like want to do that. So I love how you take advantage of that, because I think that folks miss out on that piece. And there's so many groups set up for your niche industry or lots of things for Black professionals out there too. So I just love that you were like kind of living what you're preaching out here too by taking advantage of those resources.
Thanks. Yeah, no, and I hear you because I tell people I'm a social introvert. Like when I'm in the spaces, like I usually go to network. I might meet like a few people and have more of that in-depth conversation, but I really enjoy too, like connecting people and if I know someone that might be can help someone else, like making that connection or because I think it is, it's just a team effort and helping each other out can be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Can y'all hear me good? Y'all hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
Yes.
just making sure. Um, I was looking at your services too. I know you talked about them earlier, but I'm kind of just assuming since you are you in the HR field, I like the fact that you had the financial coaching, but then you included employer benefits. So I'm assuming there's a lot of people that you've talked to, you work with, that aren't even thinking like that. So, um, how do you kind of break that down for them? Is that a difficult conversation for you to have with them, or is it just are they usually super happy and enlightened afterwards? I'm assuming the latter though.
Yeah, I think it could kind of depend, but I think it kind of goes back to like driving that awareness and then driving that like maybe holistic view about a situation because even whether it's something from a benefit from a professional development standpoint, if it's maybe a job that's going to support you in continuing your education or certification or something that will build your brand as well, I kind of say, it's I almost have to think like a free agent in the environment these days. When I think about my parents, they're more so stay with the company 40 years, retire. That's not necessarily the landscape we're in today. So I would say one aspect of it is that kind of career benefits, but then I would also say what are your other benefits, such as like your 401k, your HSA? Are you taking advantage of matches or because that's money on the table that you don't want to forego. And again, I mentioned just like the impact of compounding interest or that compounding effect that, with something like a 401k, if you start that initially, you don't even have to really do much and that will accumulate over time. So but I think just kind of being able to kind of share the benefits and and share the benefits, but then also like what it can grow into, and then how it can kind of tie into your financial future. And again, like your wealth building, your more of that longevity aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I love the website. I love the layout and the approach. For our listeners, and for me, I'll be honest. This is a little bit from my perspective. Like, what is the I guess what should a person that gets in contact you expect? So if a person goes to the website and says, "Hey, I'm looking for financial advice on my small business or whatever," many times in the financial realm, there's been mentorship not as much, in our community, but it's starting to grow. But it's also reaching out for business. Like there's business coaches, there are all these other things. So I know I find myself, and I know other people I've talked with is like, what's that process? Like what's that process? Is it like a weekly, a bi-weekly thing? Is it, phone calls? What would somebody expect if they were to reach out and kind of make that call?
Yeah, I think it primarily depends if it's like an individual or if there's someone like looking for their school or organization. I'd say a lot of my focus is like college students because I do think that they're at that pivotal transition point that making some of these decisions can be instrumental. So I would say that more from me from a group perspective. So kind of understanding what is the student demographic. Like again, really focus more on those like fundamental topics. And so I think with either or situation with individuals, kind of taking a step back and understanding the need. And I would say like a repertoire of different like topics that I can kind of focus on, but I try to initially take a step back and understand like what is the need there, what is the demographics, what is the kind of situation that we're trying to solve. And so I think with individuals, that discovery phase is a lot around understanding a person's why and as well as like their current situation. So again, when I think of a lot of things like projects. So like where do we want to get to? Where are we now? And then what are those steps in between to help you along that path? So so trying to understand that and then what's the kind of best approach to get a game plan and a roadmap to get us there.
Sounds like a coach to me.
right. Where we go, right?
Absolutely.
That's coach.
She laid it down right there. She laid it down the path.
I think it's interesting that and it makes a lot of sense that you have some college students, right? Because like, I think so many of us are like often like first generation, right? So first generation coming out of college, possibly first generation professional with like having some extra income to think about playing with. And like folks said earlier on this show, like it's generally not taught in schools, the financial literacy piece and any of that. So that's so important. I think we've heard that from several guests as well. It's like you feel like you're almost learning late, but it can be right on time if you're doing with the right person. So I love that you're trying to understand folks holistically and, like you said, their whole situation and get that to that why, because I think that is often something that like folks miss when they're advertising or even creating products and services. They miss people's why and understanding like what they're trying to do and what all they are thinking about and considering to come in front of you. So I love that you do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, and I think, with the college students too, or one of the reasons why I was interested in the whole financial literacy piece is, if I think about, I remember being in college and credit card companies being on campus and offering your credit card for a t-shirt. It's just like, or, pizza. I'm like, well, that pizza actually is costing you, maybe a few $100s, or more when it's all said and done. But again, if you don't know, and I think, one of the things that I aim to do is be able to help people kind of understand some of those situations and navigate. And so, yeah. And then kind of along the lines of the why, I think to me, money is a tool. It helps, again, provide you with some of those choices. But I had a mentor from my Toastmasters group that kind of gave a good analogy that he tries to focus on what to be, to have, and to do, with like focusing on like to be like as a person, what is my goal, what is my focus there, and then the have and the to do is also along those same lines, but to me the to be kind of equates almost to like your why or kind of what that focus area is.
Dope.
Cool.
That why is I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in the last 3 months as like the starting spot. Don't talk about nothing else until you figure out that's the core piece. That's the core piece, and then everything branches off of that. So thank you for re-emphasizing that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So our our listeners, they listen to every, a lot of things that we say, a lot of books that our guests come and recommend. So are there any books that you're currently reading or you have read that you would definitely recommend people pick up and check out?
Yeah, so a few books. So one I read more recently is called The Psychology of Money by
Mm-hmm.
Morgan Housel. So I thought it has different stories about kind of financial management and even just kind of how you think about finances. Again, that one kind of reinforces to me like money is a tool. It's not necessarily the end all be all, but also some of the common ways to think about money dynamics. And the other one I would say is more of a classic. It's The Millionaire Next Door
Mm.
um, by Thomas Stanley. So yeah, I think that was a book I read in like high school and got the fight like personal finance bug. But I think to me, that one kind of resonates with me in terms of how do you think about like your money choices? And it's very kind of study driven in terms of looking at, who are the everyday millionaires? How do they live their lives? And so I would say those two books I would recommend checking out.
That's awesome. I'm just ordering The Millionaire Next Door right now.
You have to let me know what you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those,
I'm
those
gonna
are
I
miss
those are
need
that
that.
one.
those are great
Right.
books. Those are great books.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on and being a part of this podcast. I know I've learned a lot. And right now,
Mhm.
actually, I wish I had space immediately because there's a lot. It gives me. I have these thoughts that I'm like, man, there's some things I need to work through. There's things that you brought out that I'm like, okay, some of these choices aren't all lining up and making sense, and I
Mm.
need to be a little bit more deliberate, as you set it out for us, Coach, about about the direction and making sure everything's lining up. So we can't thank you enough for being a part of this and then
Mhm.
sharing this information and knowledge with our audience. I am going to bring back up this website, www.mindset2 the number 2 money.org. So make sure you check out that website. And want to reemphasize, yes, you heard it here. First Wealth Literacy Conference in Madison on April 29th. And the location for this, did you guys have a location already?
Yes, it's going to be at the Goodman Center.
Goodman Center. Yes, you did mention that, the Goodman Center.
Mhm.
So make sure you are there. Is there a process? Are they able to sign up? Is this ticketed? Is this kind of show up? How does that work?
Yeah, so we will have our ticketing up soon. On our Facebook page. So if you search just Wealth Literacy Conference, that'll bring you to the Facebook page. If you want to go ahead and follow that there, and we'll have more information about how you sign up.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Awesome.
Um, I need to be there.
We'll
I
be
need to
there.
be. I need to be there front row. Um, Man, that's something that I wouldn't want to miss, and something that I want to be a
Mhm.
part of, especially the,
Yeah.
the first annual. Yeah, you got to be at the first
Absolutely.
one.
Mhm.
So our listeners got homework. You got book recommendations. You got a website to hit up, and then you got a conference as more information is coming out
Mhm.
that you need to make sure you inquire for. And if you can't be there, make sure you send somebody else there that can grab that information and
Mhm.
share it with you. Make sure to hit us up on myradio22.com, BLK Currency Podcast. That will have all the audio, link to the audio, and all of the video, as well as you can visually see this podcast on Spotify, but also on YouTube at youtube.com/radio22. Man, there's a lot to work through. I got a lot to think about. Y'all may be getting a call. But thanks again so much. We appreciate you being a part of this Black
Mhm.
Currency Podcast. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in once again. Make sure to check this out, rewind it, take your notes, go back and check out episode 1, season 1.
Mhm.
And I think the whole picture of what they're putting together will come together for you, and you see this is an amazing movement and something that you need to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Enjoy yourself. Thanks again.
All right, thanks.
All right. Peace.
Peace.
Ain't you sick of giving me your money?
Oh, I know he didn't do it, baby.
Whoa, where you going?
No, I'm about to go make these drop balls.